right, good morning, everyone. Still trying to get set up here. There we go. Can you guys confirm that you can see the CACFP website on your screen? Okay, cool. So we got a pretty good group in here this morning, about 30 of us. And it looks like we got a good mixture of all kinds of different types of institutions. So really this training, have any of you guys been to any of the other application trainings yet? Or is this your first one? Because we had, it seems like a million already, but we had 2 full ones last week. Then we had one just for school at risk. And then we had one just for family daycare home sponsors, because those folks kind of operate a little bit different. So this training is kind of set up to be more of like a live Q&A. It looks like we have some that haven't attended yet. So I'm going to go through the forms that have new changes. My screen's going to look a little different than your screen because I'm logged in not only as myself, so I have access to different buttons and things aren't grayed out like it would be on your screen, but it's a test account. So you might see a lot of junk in here that doesn't make sense. So at any time, I mean, stay muted just because I get easily distracted. But if you have a question, interrupt me in the chat or unmute yourself and speak up. So let's see, let's get started. I think I've got, do I have my other CACFP people on? Let me look here. Making sure I got backup. Lisa or Jennifer, are either one of you guys on? Okay. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm on my own today. That's okay. I will try to keep up with my chat as best as I can. If I don't see your question, just interrupt me and unmute yourself. Okay. So like I said, I'm just going to go through and highlight the major changes that you can expect to see on your application. And the intent of this training is for you to tell me what you need help with. If you're stuck, if you've started your application, you don't know where to go, this is why we're here today. And so hopefully we can answer your questions before we get off this call today. So first off, on this business maintenance page, a lot of the stuff on this page, you can't change, at least not in this business information section. And it should all be right. But if you see anything in here in the section that doesn't make sense or doesn't seem right, contact your person. And your person, I'll say that a lot today, your person is down here. So when it comes to your application, here's the person you need to contact. If you're independent childcare center, that's going to be Lisa King. If you are a multi-sided sponsor that's not at risk, that will be Lori Burrows, and then Jennifer Pryor is over all of our at risk. So just keep that in mind. That's who your person is. But if you ever forget, you can go down here at the very bottom and find out who that is. Okay, so you're mailing your physical and address where all your records are to be kept. You guys can update that. That should always be kept up to date. It's important that we always know where to find you, where to mail your information, and where your records are going to be kept. But we did add these 4 digits. We had to go and look those up and update them for you. But if you happen to know your 4 digits of your zip code and it appears wrong, please correct it because we have to have that included on everything now. One big change we made on this page is this owner, executive director / superintendent page. I mean, we can't really, there's not a word to describe all the types of individuals we have because we have so many different types of institutions. But this section right here is for like the main person in your district that would be your primary responsible principal or individual. And we call those RPIs in CACFP. We have lots of acronyms we like to use. So if you're a school, this should be your superintendent. It may not be the person that necessarily does the programs, and we get that, but it's still the person who, if something were to happen, we need to know who that person is to go to let them know, hey, your institution is seriously deficient, or hey, whatever. That's where this person needs to go. And then we can only update that. So if this area is wrong, you need to let us know and we'll get it updated. However, on this section down here, authorized representatives, that's where everyone else can go. So you guys have the ability to add this. If there's someone that has any kind of Responsibility in CACFP, other than the person listed up here, you need to list them, and you can add these people and remove them and edit them as you need. It's just this section that only we can change. And the reason we lock this down is because we need to make sure that we always know who that person is. And when it changes, we need to have the correct information on file for it. Right now, most of you have probably experienced this. Our emails, when we send mass emails, it goes to this email address right here. Or if the person has a user account, they also get that email. If, say, the best example I can say of when we would let this be a different email than for who the person that's listed here would be like a superintendent. Superintendents normally will get our information, we'll just pass it along to their food person, right? So if you want to have the address listed here for the person who needs the emails, as long as we have the main head honcho person's name and birth date and their title, we're good. We can put whatever address is listed here. In the future, we're hoping by the end of this calendar year, by the end of December, hopefully, we can have it where our mass emails will go out. If there's an email listed on this page, when we send a mass email, it'll go to everyone listed on this page. That is our hope. Okay, so if anything's wrong here, you got to let us know. You got to email your person, let them know to update it, because we just put in there what was from last year's information. So if it's wrong, we need to know. Where do you put your information as a sponsor? Okay, so you would put your CFO right here. If you're a nonprofit, it's going to be your CFO, CEO, executive director. That's why I say you guys all use different terminology, but it's just that main person who's in charge. And then list everyone else down here. And by the end of the year, we hope to have it where everybody will get emails and we will not have that confusing debacle when we send out mass emails. Any questions on this page? That's really the biggest change on this page. Just making sure we know who the person who we need to contact when it comes to CACFP. If you're multi-sited, you will see this site maintenance page. That means you have obviously more than one site. You're a sponsor. And this is where you can go in to review your site information. We took your access away a few years ago just because we wanted to make sure we also had access to update this and make sure we have the right information on file. For your sites, if you don't have a site maintenance, if you're single-sided, this does not apply to you, but I know we have some multi-sites in here and I wanted to touch on it. It is deceiving. You'll go into this page, it'll let you type all day long, but then you guys will come down here to your save button and the save button doesn't work. So we need to make it grayed out so you guys can't type in it, because then we get calls and say, well, won't let me save. And that's because we want to update this information. So if you're multi-sided, go into your site maintenance, look at your site information. If this person is not the same person who's the site representative there, this is going to filter onto your application for participation. It's going to be wrong there. So make sure you get us the updated information if needed in site maintenance. If you don't have site maintenance, then just none of that applied to you. So going on to our application. I'm doing a training. Sorry, guys. Okay, so if you haven't inserted your application yet, I'm not going to do it again, but if you haven't, go to here and type in 2023 and click Add New Renewal Application. And it should populate right here. If you are a school at risk, all you do is at risk. Make sure that we have gotten what we need from you guys and your application is set up correctly. If you are a school at risk, public school, you should not see, if you're single-sided, you should not see a budget form on here. And you should not see the VCA form. There's a lot of things that public schools don't have to do, and we kind of streamline that process for you guys. So if you're seeing this main form and you are a public school, reach out to me after this training or right now, send me an email. I'm gonna put my email in here. Because that means we haven't gotten your application switched over. We created a new application type specifically for our school at risk, because you guys already participate on another one of our programs. So you're already VCA. You don't need to prove you're financially viable and you're capable and all that, because if you're in good standing with one of our other programs, it's just a given that you are going to be in this program as well until I mean, something might happen down the road, but right now you're good. So there's certain things you don't have to do. One of which being the VCA, and then also the budget that I'm sure you'll be happy to hear about. Okay, so for those of us that are in here who have the VCA page, let me back up. I get ahead of myself. I need to say something else. Let's go back to the checklist here. Another change we made, and what we're going to continue to do as the years go, is that we're trying to make this an easier process. Last year was terrible. If you guys did an application last year and it was a renewal, our brand new people just thought it was terrible altogether. But our renewal people were just like, what have you done? We get it. The budget was terrible. It didn't work out. We've changed it a whole lot this year. It's a lot simpler. We're still collecting the same information, but in an easier way. So what we also hope to happen is to have more forms rolled forward in a submitted and approved status, because your application and your agreement is actually permanent. You're basically in an agreement with us to do this and do it the right way forever until you aren't. And the only two ways you wouldn't be is if you choose to quit or if you unfortunately become terminated. So we really just need you to review stuff and update as needed. We encourage you to do that throughout the year. If something changes, change it then, because waiting until application renewal is the wrong time, and waiting till we come out and find that you're not operating the way it says on your application is the wrong time. Things change, update it as it changes. Okay, and so eventually what's going to happen is that these forms are going to be designed to roll forward, submitted and approved, like I said. This year we just have 4 that will do that, because we have some updates on some of these forms that you need to make. So when you insert your application, if you were approved last year and you operated last year and you were still approved when you inserted this new application, the meal policy statement, the civil rights, the public release, and the state agency agreement, these 4 items should have rolled forward, all submitted and all approved. And we'll keep adding to that as time goes on. So your item description, yes. So depending on the type of institution you are, you're going to have a different list. And I think, Sherry, you're probably with a school. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a school, if you are, okay, so you're probably seeing, and like you're seeing me do things on your screen that you guys can't do, but just to clear up that confusion. If you're a public school and you have more than one site, your list is going to look like this. If you're a public school at risk and you only have one site, I may have said that backwards. The previous one is if you had more than one site. If you're a public school at risk and you have one site, this is what your list looks like. Everyone's going to see differences in their list, because we kind of have condensed some of our forms so that when you first go into the application, right off the bat, you're seeing less forms than what you did last year. And I think that in itself it makes it less overwhelming. One form you're probably missing if you're at risk that you don't see on my screen that you should see on yours is the at-risk questionnaire. And I'll go into that later. You have to we kind of made it tricky to have that form appear because people were filling out that at-risk form that it didn't apply to. So you only see that at-risk form if you're at risk now. You only see the adult questionnaire if you are an adult program. Okay, so that's why it's missing from my list, because again, this is just some test. This is a test account. So anyway, you might see some different things. And right off the bat, like I said, it's a far less list of things, because we've kind of only made things appear that you need, and we've kind of condensed some other things into one form. So if you see these forms that are rolled forward, submitted, and approved, you simply just have to click into them, make sure nothing needs to be changed. You don't need to resubmit it. Okay, that's just one less step. They're not hard forms to do, but that's one less thing for you to submit. It's one less thing for us to approve. The less we have to click in and click on and approve, the quicker it's going to be for us to approve your application. So I digress. Going back to the VCA form, viability, capability, and accountability questionnaire that we called VCA. This form should have rolled forward with all your information from last year. This was another form that threw everyone for a loop last year. We added all these questions. It used to just be 5 short, simple questions, and then we added a whole bunch more. We realized that we were requiring way too much information. We were asking for names and all that, and so we kind of backed up a little bit. This VCA form would be another thing that next year going forward, after we've corrected some stuff on here this year, your VCA wouldn't necessarily change. This is talking about how you operate. what your procedures are, what your policies are. Those things generally aren't going to change drastically. They can. But when it comes to like your record keeping and your accounting methods, you guys typically tend to stay on the same path unless maybe you have a finding and a review and you need to change your policies. But everything that you had entered last year rolled forward to this form. But what I need you guys to do is go through each of these questions because we kind of tweaked a couple of them. For example, number 7. We added these multiple choice here because a lot of people were just like, I don't know what these type of accounting methods are, or I don't know what I do. And that's okay. We don't need you to have fancy names for anything you do. We just need you to understand what's required. Tell us how you do, what your procedures are. And if you don't know a name for it, that's fine. We don't care. Just tell us what you do. How are you keeping up with your finances and what is your accounting method? How do you record stuff? And explain it there. If you don't know what it's called, just put other. Because then when we come out and do a review, we're just going to make sure that's what you're really doing. Number 8 and 9, those didn't change, but still please read through them and make sure you don't need to update anything. The major changes we did make would be on number 10 and 11 and 13. Last year we said, please list the name and the title of yada, yada, yada. You do not have to list a name now. We realized that was too much, especially last year. We were painfully aware that nobody stayed fully staffed, and to require you to list the name of a vacant spot sometimes it was not feasible. So we just need the title of the person who would be responsible for doing these certain things. This would have rolled forward with last year's information, and you should have names there. Delete it. I'll be the first to apologize to you because last year you probably left a name out. We kicked your form out and said, hey, put a name. Now we're doing the opposite. So we do that a lot in CACFP, but take the names out. Take those out and resubmit this form. We just need to know the title of the person who would be doing these responsibilities. Nothing else has changed, but please read through all your responses and make sure that's what you're really doing for each of those things. So the main thing you're doing on this page, taking out names and resubmitting. Any questions so far? Again, these next 4 forms should be approved, submitted and approved. Nil policy statement, that's all this is. You don't even really need to open it if you don't want. But if you do click, I have read with this and agree, it's going to kick it out and we'll have to reapprove it. Not a big deal, but there's nothing to do on this page. Civil rights, again, go in here, review it, make sure nothing's changed. Typically 1 through 4, these things aren't going to change, but they might. We wouldn't know if you didn't tell us. So if not, just look at it. Number 5 should have a check mark in it. This is just, again, certifying you understand everyone has to have civil rights training. We don't ask for you to send that in anymore. We ask for you to keep that in your files. When we come out and do a review, we will verify that it is on file. And then 6 and 7, that might be ones that might change from year to year, maybe not, but it's asking about linguistic needs. So if there's anything, if you have other languages spoken in your facilities and you need anything in different languages, this is where we ask for you to let us know that. But if it hasn't changed, you just need to scroll through. If everything's fine on these forms, simply click return to checklist. You do not need to resubmit, they're already approved. Public release, this one works just the same. Everyone who is renewing their application and not brand new should have this right here. And you can choose to opt into our statewide public release. Just like you guys have to do a public release every year, so do we. If you opt into ours, you don't have to do your own separate one. So if this is checked, and it doesn't matter if anything's listed here. I will tell you if there's old information here and you delete it, you will have to resubmit the form. Not a big deal, but if you want to delete it, click delete. And then if you want to opt into our statewide, or if you really do a public release that you want to put on here, and that if you did, you really should, you would enter it here, just like you always have. But if you carry forward every year and just let us include you in our statewide release, after applications are done, we print up a list, send it to our communications department, and we take care of it for you. If you're okay with choosing that, go ahead and just go to checklist. So if that is one thing you'll see that you might have someone that submitted this form, last year, and if they're just rolling forward from year to year approved, it's fine. It doesn't matter, because at the time that it was submitted and approved, that person was authorized to do that. You're going to see the same thing with our names because we change in the office. So these are going to roll forward, and whoever approved it last year, their name's going to be there. And they may not even be doing CACFP anymore. But at the time that it was submitted and approved, they were authorized to do so. So you don't need to worry about those names. Does that answer your question? These forms right here, state agency, this one has actually rolled forward for several years that way because it is a permanent agreement, and we're kind of following suit with all of our other forms. But if you have recently come into your position and you're the one doing this now, you might go into your state agency form and see that there's some name that's several years old, and there might even be people who aren't even in this office anymore who approved it. Don't worry about it. It was approved, submitted and approved by authorized people at that time. This form never needs anything, but I encourage you guys every year to go in here and print a copy. I say this term about this form every time. It's a living document, meaning it reads, it changes. We don't change it mid-year. We try not to slip up and have to do things suddenly in the middle of the year. If we change a new policy, we save it all up for this time of year. And we know it's an overwhelming time, but it's because we have to have it in our agreement. We have to be notified of it beforehand and all that good stuff. So I encourage you to print this every year and just file it. That might sound wasteful because it is like 12 pages. And if you've been in CACFP very long, you know we waste lots of trees, unfortunately. But the reason I encourage you to do that is because one of the flaws of our system is some of these forms, we have to be really careful, because if we change something on a form now, it changes it back to the beginning of the history since you've operated. So your agreement has changed over time because we have new policies and we take things away, add things, what have you. I just encourage you to print a copy so you know exactly what you're agreeing to that year, because it will change in the following years. We didn't really make any changes. We just corrected some typos and stuff this year. Any of the new stuff that we implemented this year, we sent it to you guys in a different way. And we'll talk about all those other new requirements in a little bit. Again, print it. You don't have to read it all 12 pages, but it's important for you to have it. These 4 forms, click through them. Nothing needs to be changed. You don't need to click any buttons. If something needs to be changed, resubmit it. Disclosure of lobbying activities. I don't know of anyone in here. We've had one person, one entity in the entire time I've been in CACFP that ever actually did this form, because they legitimately did lobbying on behalf of their institution. If you don't lobby, there's nothing for you to do. You just scroll down and submit it. But USDA requires that you fill out this form every year. The purpose is basically you can't use our funds to lobby. So if you lobby, you have to report it. So I'd say 99.999%, if not 100% of everybody in here today, you would just scroll down and click submit. Okay, so the next form is our application for participation. I do have a few family daycare home sponsors in here, so this form is not applicable to you guys. We'll go over the provider application towards the end because there are only a few of you in here. The vast majority of everyone in here will have this application for participation for their sites. When you click in here, even if you're independent or if you're multi-sited, you all have this form. Some of it might be populated, some of it might not be, depending on if you're independent or a sponsor. So like for a sponsor, these should be populated with what was in site maintenance, like I told you. So if anything's wrong, we need to change it over there in site maintenance. We did add this here though, so you need to type in a title. We did kind of have a weird glitch. So if you have more than one site and you can type in all these, you shouldn't be able to. We missed that. So it should populate from site maintenance. If you're able to type in here and you do change something right now, that's fine. We're getting ready to make it where we're going to make a change later this week where you can't do that. The reason being is if you change it here and it doesn't get changed in site maintenance, now in site maintenance, we have Betty Joe, but over here you have Cassie Rideau. Okay. So if you change it here, let us know so we can go into site maintenance and change it. But this right here, we added a title. You will have to type that in. So make sure we know when we're coming out, who are we looking for at this site and what is their title? C, is this site affiliated with a sponsor? So you can see it's grayed out here. If you're independent, you're single-sided, you don't have a sponsor, so you don't need to answer this one. But if you have more than one site, make sure that you answer this yes or no. Affiliated means, is it part of your legal entity? The vast majority of our sponsors have affiliated sites in Oklahoma. We just have a few sponsors. I can count literally on one hand how many we have that have unaffiliated sponsors. If you're a school, all your sites are affiliated. If you're a Head Start, Community Action, all those are affiliated. You have some other affiliation. It's just going to be our at-risk sponsors, which I don't think we have just at-risk that aren't school. Like at-risk that might go serve at parks and public libraries and things like that. Those would be unaffiliated sites. D, make sure you answer this appropriately. This is specifically asking about if you're licensed to provide care for children or adults. You might have other type of licenses or certifications, but what we're asking for is the ability to provide care for children or adults. If you are an at-risk institution, you guys will only be the ones to click no. And it's important that you do click no because it will gray out this, it will gray out this license capacity to 0. Because if you aren't licensed, you don't have a capacity. If you do have a license, which most of you in here do, you click yes. Make sure if you participate in another state that you list what states. We don't have a lot that operate nationwide, but we do have some. F is one that gets marked wrong a lot. We don't have any private schools. A child care center is not a private school. You might consider it that, but it's not. So we're either going to have public schools, tribes, or none of the above. Most of our people on CACFP are none of the above. It's really important that you mark the right thing. And when we get to public schools, if you're a sponsor, I'll show you why this is so significant. If you're single-sided, this shouldn't allow you to click in it. It's going to be auto-populated from what's selected on your business maintenance page right here. So whatever this says right here, it's going to filter into here and mark it for you. If you question if that's correct or not, you need to contact your person. That was decided on your initial approval, okay? If you're multi-sided, you have to select it yourself. Make sure you're making the appropriate selection. If you are a school, you're public. All your sites are going to be public. If you're nonprofit, I don't think we have any nonprofit that has anything other than nonprofit sites. Other than maybe if you're a sponsor, a nonprofit sponsor, and you might have child care centers that receive, well, no, if you're a nonprofit sponsor, you'd still be nonprofit because none of those have to meet the 25%. So you guys should know which one to select if you're a sponsor. If not, contact me and we'll make sure we get it marked correctly. Type of facility, that should have rolled forward. Make sure if you select Head Start, there's another selection down below, and I'll point that out that you also select that. We like to ask things more than once on these applications. I don't know why. So what if you are high school, but in a public school property, oh, your Head Start in a public school property are not required to have a DHS license. If you don't have a license, you truly should mark no. You would be the exception. We don't have a lot of Head Starts that aren't licensed by DHS as well, but yeah, mark no. If you have a Head Start that's not licensed by DHS, you would say no. You're still going to you're going to put your capacities in other places, like your number enrolled and then your maximum meal. But if you're a Head Start and you're not licensed by DHS, it's no. Childcare owners that have to submit the Title 20. So no, we didn't get that changed quick enough for those letters to not say that. But we have adequate processes in place to make sure you guys, if you come on receiving Title 20 or otherwise known as DHS subsidy, which we tried to change that wording all throughout our system because the people who are in subsidy are like, you guys are the only ones that call it Title 20 anymore. And so we're slowly trying to transition to calling it DHS subsidy. But we have a process in place to know if you lose your contract or if you quit your contract, we know almost immediately. And that's the purpose of those letters, because you come on the program as a for-profit. Way back in the day, and I'll talk about this again later on, but way back in the day, the only way to come on this program is you had to have at least 25% of your kids that received DHS subsidy. Somewhere along the way, several decades ago already, they changed the law to allow it where you could also come on if you were a private nonprofit, or if you had children. If you may not take subsidy, but you have to you do the income applications, and at least 25% of those are free and reduced. That's why we had to collect that subsidy information, because that was the way you were eligible to participate. We have a process in place to know if you aren't. So we don't need those letters anymore. That was a really long answer, but that's why we don't need them. Next year, those letters won't say, please give a copy of this to your food program. We don't need them anymore. If you're a tribal Head Start, do we put no since we are federally approved? No on license. If you have some type of, let me back up. If you have tribal license or DHS license, I shouldn't exclude tribes, also military, because you guys also have your own licensing standards, which are actually typically tribes and military licensing standards are more restrictive than DHS. So thank you for pointing that out. I'm glad that you said that, because yes, you would put yes here too. Because you do have a license to provide care for children and or adults. Well, all of our adults are licensed through Department of Health. So you guys would say yes here too. Because I think we have some adult daycares in here as well. Let me look. Yep, I think so. Okay, I don't know of anyone in our state currently that really does outside school hours care. So if you question if you do that, shoot me an email, because you probably don't. You guys just provide, if you're a child care center, you have that before and after school care in your facility, but that's not what outside school hours care centers are. So if you question if you are that, reach out to me and ask, because you're probably not. And then your at-risk programs, these are going to be for schools. You guys do your at-risk. We have some tribes that do at-risk, and then we have private nonprofits. It's important for you to know that if at any point any of this changes, you need to let us know, because you should be looking on your screen and you shouldn't be able to type into this. So you need to get it updated. So I'm going to type some stuff in here real quick and show you something that we added. And tell me, I try not to skip around, but I can't promise that I won't. But as we're going, I'm going to answer these so I can click save here in a minute. Okay. Hours of operation. This is the hours that we can expect to come to this site and you be open. Not necessarily when you're serving meals, just when we can come on site and expect to find you operating whatever program you're operating. For daycare centers, obviously it's just your typical hours of operations. At risk or schools, it's going to be when we can come, because your meal service time might be the same amount of time your program is. That's fine, but your hours of operation, your meal times have to be within your hours of operation. So we need to be able to come and find you at the right time. Is this the hours that children are present? If you're at risk, then yes. If you're a child care center, it's just going to be your normal, children would be present at that time. So yeah, it's when we can expect to know to come and find you there and do a review. That's why that's important. So we know when to come. Dates of operation on all of our renewals. The dates that you should put would be this for this year. This is one thing we see wrong a lot. Either you put the current date or you're a school and it kind of gets confusing and you guys put your school year date. It's important for you guys to know these are the dates of operation for this program. You're applying for our fiscal year, and our fiscal year starts in October and ends in September. So if you're a school, don't put your school year, which would be August to May, because this application is not good for August of this year. It's only good starting October, and then it's going to carry on into next September. Does that make sense? Just make sure that you're putting the correct dates in here. I don't think we have any brand new people on. I think you guys are all renewals, but just in case, because we're a pretty good big group. If you are brand new and this is the first time you're doing your application, you're just going to put today's date, whatever date you're filling it out, and then 9/30 of the following year. Or the end of the fiscal year, because when we do your final approval, I'll come in there and update it to your effective date. See, we did change. We added days of the week you're supposed to select. Last year, it was just how many days are you going to operate, but we added this so we know which days, because sometimes you guys don't operate 5 days a week. Some you more, some less. And then your number of operating weeks per year. Mark here if you do meals and shifts. If yes, you've got to explain. It's got to be a pretty good explanation. It's not a very big box, but most of you, it's because of school. You have school kids that come in the morning and leave, and then you have more that come in, so you need a split shift. something that tells us why you're doing split shift. On F, you're not going to see anything but this because we come and check all these for you. We do that because these give you access to claims. We had this where you could click it some years ago, and then we realized sometimes we locked you out of claims, and then you were coming, giving yourself access back. So we're like, oops, we need to take that away. So if you are just a regular run-of-the-mill daycare and you're doing regular CACFP, you're eligible for all months. And you won't see these comments either, but I'm typing something in here because it won't let me save if I don't. If you're an at-risk, we'll take away June and July because you can't operate when school's not in session. If you ever go to claim and it says you're not eligible for the month, it means one of these months aren't checked, and you need to give us a call and see what's going on. Sometimes we might take your access away for months. Say, and this happens a lot, we have a lot of Head Starts that contract with the school to provide meals. You have an agreement to furnish food with the school. And so a school has to, they can only do a contract based on their fiscal year because they have specific rates they have to charge you guys because of NSLP. So if you contract with the school for meals, if a school prepares your meals and you have that agreement, the dates have to be July 1 to June 30th. Okay. And so we'll only approve you for the remaining months of the year so that we remember when June's over, you got to get a new contract with that school because that's when their rates change. So I'm just giving you some of the reasons why we wouldn't approve all your months right up at the beginning of the year. Head Start has 2 classrooms with 1 class that is served a meal with a few minutes before another. Yes, that would be a shift. And you can have 2 shifts of any given meal. And sometimes people use shifts to lengthen their amount of serving time, like they do 8 to 8:30 and then 8:30 to 9 for a breakfast. And I think for a long time it was a misconception, or maybe someone somewhere at some point said it, that you could only have 30-minute meal times. I know when I operated as a sponsor, I was under the assumption that your meal times could only be 30 minutes long, and that's not true. It might have been a rule of thumb for the state of Oklahoma, but I know it's not now. There is no regulation that states any length of time that a meal has to be or can't be. It's just got to be reasonable. So if you want a meal time that lasts an hour, just make it an hour. And it doesn't mean the meal has to be over by the ending, because we do make you put an ending time, but that's just the ending of when you're serving. Because you might serve a child right up until the last minute, and they might eat for 15 more minutes past that, probably not, but that's the time in which you're serving. Okay. So anyway, maybe that will help answer your question, because if we're just talking a few minutes, you might just consider lengthening your serving time. We changed section 3 up a little bit, made this box a little bigger. 99% of you guys just put this here. And while the example is good enough, if you could provide more detail than counts are taken as meals served, that would be ideal, because this needs to match how you're operating. We're going to come out and make sure how your counts are being taken. And really the only wrong answer you can have here is counts are based on attendance. That's the wrong answer. You can't just take attendance and then do your meal counts. You guys know that. So I would encourage you that if you currently see this here and that's all that's there, give us a little bit more. Okay, now we're down to our meal times. So we did make some changes, and you'll see that we have these CACFP and at-risk. Most of you are going to be all CACFP, and some of you are going to be all at-risk, but we have a few of you in the mix that might do CACFP and at-risk in one site. If not, then what I'm about to say doesn't apply to you, but you still have to make updates on these meal times. It's important that we know what type of meal service these meal times apply to. So if all you do is CACFP, you just do regular CACFP, have nothing to do with that risk, you can't even click these. It's grayed out. It won't even let you do that. The only way you can click these buttons here is if you're at risk and it's tied to this up here, which you also can't click. So if you're at risk, we've done what we need to do. The reason we have at risk grayed out is because there's very specific eligibility guidelines, and when it needs to be updated, we have to update it. But if you're currently at risk, it'll roll forward checked, and you should be able to click these buttons. And probably like I said, I'm just in a test account, so I don't have any meal times listed, but probably all of you guys that have logged in you see a time listed here. And let me see if it'll let me add it. Yeah. And it's going to say no and no on both of them. No and no. It should never say yes and yes if you don't really do at risk, and you shouldn't be able to click yes and yes unless you do. But it shouldn't say no and no either. And the reason it says no and no is because we put this new function in an existing page. So I need you to go and update it. So those of you that need it to change it to be yes on one or the other, you simply click edit and put yes. Like all of you that are just CACFP, you're going to click edit. The only thing you can click is CACFP. This will be grayed out. You'll click yes and add an update. Did you see how I did that? So you're going to click edit, make your selection to be whatever it is you actually do, and update. Because one of these have to say yes. Otherwise, we don't need to know about the meal time, really. Is that clear as mud? It's not a game changer if you don't update it, because we can update it on our end, but the least amount of things we have to fix when it gets to us, the less amount of time it's going to take us to get you approved. One thing I want to make sure you do know is that you see this message here, mealtime changes must be submitted to SDA on the mealtime change form, yada, yada, yada. Okay, this is only pertaining to after you're approved. We don't need mealtime change forms right now. This is your freebie. In the beginning of the year, you're going to get approved. And then after you're approved, if you change your meal times after that is when we need that mealtime change form. I know it seems like we keep throwing new things and new forms and making it more difficult, but most of the time reason we do that is because either someone's done something wrong or to create a problem, or we've had an audit finding. And the one reason we've had to do this is for this reason. So say you wanted to do supper. I don't know. This is the best example I can find. You are approved for supper. We approve you in October to do suppers, and you claim October, November, December for suppers. But after the new year, you're like, you know what? I'm done with suppers. I'm not going to keep kids late anymore. I'm going to take that off. And so you go and delete your supper time. Then our auditors come back in April, May, and they pull our claim data and they say, why did you pay ABC daycare for suppers? They don't have a supper time listed. You paid them for meals they weren't eligible for. You were at the time, and you guys know as well as I do, if you try to claim a meal in claims that you don't have a time for, it's not going to let you. But there's no proof of that after the fact. So that's why we created the form that if you're going to change anything about your meal times, the maximum number of meals, things like that, we got to have that paper form on file just to cover our rears when the auditors say, hey, but this is not what I'm seeing. But for right now, you don't have to do it. Any questions on meal times? Okay. Section B, a long time ago, used to be directions, and then we turned it to a comments section, and now we've added this. You just have to check it and say you understand that your records have to be on site. If they aren't, they're not supposed to be taken off site, and you're saying you understand that, but you'll be given an hour to produce records. I did have some that had questions in prior trainings that they were like, well, I use that comments box to put this or that. If you need a comments box to document anything different that you don't have another place to document, you've got this one up here if it has to do with the meal time, or you can put it here if you need a place for extra comments. But it's very rare, so that's why we went ahead and changed it. We don't care how you keep your records. We don't care if they're in a box. We don't care if they're electronic. We don't care how they're kept as long as we have access to them when we need them. Section C, we made a little bit of change down here, but we also slid this word in here. We did it actually last year and tried to clean it up. So this prior to somewhere last year we changed it, and it used to just say, is this a private nonprofit institution? But we changed it to, is this a public or a private nonprofit institution? Because if you're either one of those things, you're exempt from having to have certain requirements, like this 25% eligibility. So if you are a public or a private nonprofit, make sure this says yes, because that's what turns this off down here. You do not have to report your number of subsidy or free and reduced because you're eligible simply because of the type of institution you are. If you are a for-profit, you have to meet these 25% eligibility requirements. So schools, nonprofits, military, tribes, all you guys should be yes. because you're exempt from that 25%. We found a weird little bug, and it really was only happened with schools. If you're a school and you see that one of these have been selected and there's some numbers, email me, because I need to go in there and I'm gonna have to remove some stuff, because I think stuff rolled forward from last year that wasn't approved correctly, and I'm gonna have to get in there and turn it off for you. But I think those of you that are in here have actually fixed your stuff. If not, if you see anything here, email me and I'll get it corrected. Everyone in here, if you're renewing your application, this should say yes, because you have now participated. If last year was your first year, make sure this says yes, and just briefly tell us when and what other programs you might have operated. And then I mentioned before up here, we see a lot of disconnects with this. Why we ask it twice, I don't know. We're trying to eliminate that, but I didn't catch this one. So if you're a Head Start program, we ask up here and we ask down here. But if you're a school doing at risk, if that's all you're doing is at risk, don't put yes if you have a Head Start program, because your at-risk site doesn't have a Head Start program. You're just an after-school at-risk program, or you might be doing it during the end of the year. Your Head Start program isn't operating the at-risk. Does that make sense? Hopefully. D, we changed this a little bit. So you should really, there are a few exceptions when you might have more than one of these checked, but most of you guys are just going to have one way which you're preparing your meals. You're either going to prepare them on site, you might be multi-sited and have one kitchen and they're delivered to your different sites from the main kitchen, or you might be under contract with one of these three things. If you're under contract with one of these three things, you have to list who. If you have an agreement to furnish food with the public school system, put the public school system. If you have a food service management company, put the food service management company. This is nothing new that we're already having to do, but it's really to catch our eyes, because we have to make sure that contract's on file. And so it's going to be a little bit easier for us when we see a name here. It's going to stop us and make sure we need to go make sure we have that contract on file with you guys. If you are contracted with any outside source to provide your meals, you need to go and make sure you have the current contract. And if you don't, those are in the procurement section of the resource library. So you need to get that updated ASAP, or we can approve you for October. On 3A, you tried to update and it states number of meals may not exceed license capacity, which is correct. So if Cora, are you a school, a daycare? And you guys, I hope you're going along doing this with me as I'm rambling on, so you can ask questions like that. We can help you right now. So if you're you're a Head Start. So let me take a drink. If that would be a reason why you would need a split shift, because you do have a license capacity. If you are licensed, you have a license capacity, and any one shift of meal, you can't exceed that. So whatever you have listed here, this number here can't be greater than that. So if you have more enrolled than you have that you're licensed for, which happens, then you would have to have more than one shift, because you can serve 2 shifts of any meal up to your maximum capacity. Your number exceeds the meal service amount. Have I answered your question yet? The only time that that requirement is turned off is if you are truly unlicensed, and it will compare it back to your number of enrolled when you try to claim. Okay. And that's just regulatory. You cannot claim more in one shift than you're licensed for if you're licensed. And if you're not licensed, it can't be more than what's enrolled, obviously. Okay. Where was I at? Okay, so anyway, make sure you let us know. This is purely informational, so we don't miss a step, because we've got to make sure we have that contract. If you don't have an updated one, go to resource library here, go under procurement, and the brand new ones, I literally just got them uploaded at like midnight last night. They're in there. E, put your total number of enrollments, total number of participants enrolled. And F, I kind of already rambled about this more than once. If you're for profit, you have to do it. If you're nonprofit, it shouldn't let you. So don't type anything in, even if you can click in those boxes. You don't need to do it. Only for profit. Something we did do, we added an edit check to make sure you select the right thing here, because we noticed, again, they were asking for something else again. Whatever is marked here, if you're for profit, whether you're DHS or free and reduced, it should match what's up here. Okay. So if you are subsidy and you come down here and click free and reduced, when you try to submit, it's going to say, hey, wait a second, you're not free and reduced, you're DHS. You got to change it. If you get that message, that's what it means. It means you're trying to put your numbers on the wrong side. If you are nonprofit, everything I just said, none of it makes any difference. You don't have to fill it out. Okay, section D, we changed this up quite a bit. The way this worked in years past was kind of confusing. If you recall, we had like a place on top where you entered the admin person, then a place on the bottom where you added the operating people, and it was confusing. Now we just have one place to enter all your people. Okay, and we want titles, so we're going to say director. Oops, I can't spell. One director. Tell us, are they paid with CACFP funds or not? Yes or no? And then what does that person do? And click add. When you guys roll this page forward, you will see that there's your people entered, but all your duties are missing. And if you try to submit this page without a duty, it won't save. We're still working on an edit button. So everyone in here right now, in order to get this page to save, you're going to have to delete your people here and re-add them because there's no way to edit it and they have to have a duty. So just know that you got to delete them all. Hopefully by next week, I don't know when, they're still working on an edit button, so you don't have to delete them and re-add them. But that's what you have to do for now. You want to make sure you have at least one person doing something with cooking, preparing meals, creating menus, and you need to at least have one person doing something with the admin stuff. So everything listed on this left side, that's operating. That's people who do cook the meals and peel the carrots and cook the carrots. These people on the right, or these duties on the right, are admin responsibilities. They're the ones that procure the carrots and buy the carrots. So you might be a small center and you're the director and owner and do all these things, and that's fine. But make sure you've got those duties covered so we know who's cooking and who's keeping records. Please touch on the for-profit box again. So if you are for-profit, okay. So if you're for-profit, and depending on what you are up here, either if you're DHS subsidy, if that's what's marked for you, for your type of proprietary, you have to put your numbers in on this side. If you're free and reduced proprietary, you got to put your numbers on this side. If you try to submit this page and those things don't agree, you'll get an error message that says, hey, you can't do that. Basically, go back here and put it in the right box. But this is where you're going to enter however many you have. And it will not populate these percentages until, and I'm just making stuff up, until you save the form. So you just plug in your numbers, you click the one that applies, you plug in your numbers, and when you save the form, it'll populate your correct percentage to see if you're eligible or not. And you can come back and look at it after that calculation has happened.
Okay, I'm sorry, is that the number of the Title 20 kids that you have, or your number of enrollment?
This is your number of Title 20 kids that you have. Your enrollment goes up here. And that was a terrible example. Sorry, I shouldn't put the same number because it could be the case. You might have all kids that are DHS. Your number enrolled goes here, and the number you have on Title 20 goes here. Or if you're free and reduced, the number of free and reduced.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so section D, you're just gonna have to erase your people and start over. Sorry about that. If you accidentally submitted and something's wrong, just go back and fix it and resubmit. Nothing is undoable. You could go back and resubmit it as many times as you want until we approve it, and it won't mess anything up. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so ethnic breakdown and racial breakdown. So we did, okay, I can't remember. It happened like right at the beginning of COVID. I don't know. It all runs together at this point, but they took away our ability to visually observe a child and figure out and assume their race. I don't know if y'all can see that. I always like a cheap way to plug and show you my kiddo. But if you were to observe that child, you would probably mark him as the wrong race. I always like to make that example that you would mark him as the most blonde hair, blue-eyed white kiddo, but he's also part Japanese. You would never guess that. And we had to turn off this edit to where, because you can't, if a parent doesn't report, thank you, Dana. If a parent doesn't report the race or ethnicity of a child, which they don't have to, there's no way for you to get the correct information for it to add up and equal your enrollment. And that has been required for years and years and years. And last year, and maybe the year before, like I said, I can't remember because COVID messed everything up. I don't even know what day it is anymore. But we had it where every kid had an ethnicity and every kid had a racial breakdown. And if that had to add up to be your enrollment and it was not reported and you couldn't assume the child's race or ethnicity, like you guys, you're at a loss. So we turned it off, but we've turned it back on now, but we've added some stuff here. So if a parent truly doesn't want to report a child's race or ethnicity, I would encourage them, because USDA asks us to encourage self-reporting, but they don't have to. You can now account for those children who don't have one reported. You don't assume it, you just say it's not reported. But we also added this because prior to all of this, and when this happened, this all had to add up to equal your enrollment. And if you've done this before, you probably were frustrated because if you had an application that had multiple races checked, you still had to only pick one. So now my child would go in 2 or more races because he's Asian and white. So now you have a way to report those properly. So that edit is turned back on to where every child, all these numbers have to equal your enrollment and all these equal your enrollment. Clear as mud? And those of you that are single-sided, because I'm in a multi-sided one right now, you have a separate section. Your single-sided people are going to have a separate section for your ethnic racial breakdown, and that's for your potential eligible beneficiaries. If you don't know what to put there, call your local school. That's just something that USDA makes us report. You have to put the ethnic and racial breakdown of your area. If you can't get a hold of someone at your school, you can go on Hometown Locator or just give us a call and we can look it up for you. It's just one of those things that we have to report it because they say we do. So if you don't know what to put there, holler at us. We'll get you some numbers. Section F, nothing's changed there. Check it and say you've had training. And if you haven't had training, don't check it yet and submit, because then you're lying. So don't do that. Make sure you've had your training on everything you have to have training on. Okay, I went through all this form. This is probably the biggest change other than the budget. You're trying to upload a contract, right? So you can't upload anything. You can view uploaded documents. I'll go there right now and show you guys. So we had this locked down for years, where you couldn't even go in there, but we made it where you guys can go and view the documents. My page is going to look different than yours because I'm logged in as me, but when you go here, all this will be grayed out and you can't delete. We want you to see what we have, but we don't want you to be able to change it. You got to send it to us. So send it to your person, Sherry. So see what we have in there. If what's in there is wrong, we need the new one. If what's in here is right, we don't need it from you. Question, you're multi-sided. How do you include centers that are temporarily closed to the new app? Are they still on your list, Tabitha, or are they no longer on your site, on your list? Because we can go ahead and get them approved. Okay, send me, because I'm still working with Lori Burrows. She's new, she's our new sponsor person, so I'm helping her. So send me the ones that aren't going to be but the enrollment 0 and it makes you put more than, we can just make the site inactive and then you can just leave it be until you're ready to operate them. And you won't even submit anything. We'll just leave it, make it inactive, and you won't have to submit anything on them until you're ready to come back and do it. But email me the sites you want to make inactive, and that way we don't delete them off of there. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right, so you have the ability to look at your documents. This is beneficial for us too, because we get a deluge of we are swamped with emails because you guys have to email us stuff, but we don't want more than we need. Okay, so look at these documents and make sure if the stuff that's in there, your certificate of authorities, your DUNS, well, it's not DUNS anymore, your UEI, your childcare license if applicable. Make sure it's all up to date. If it is, we don't need new copies. But one thing that you guys are going to have to, everyone is going to have to send to us this year before we can approve you, and you're going to have to send it to your person. And I will say now, if if last year you were working with Jennifer Pryor, it's now switched to Lisa King because I've revamped things because Lisa King is the person over single-sided institutions. She's just single-sided daycares, childcare centers, or adult care centers. And I had some on Jennifer last year, but she's just our at-risk person now. I will tell you, I'm helping Lisa this year because that put a big caseload on her. So if you were corresponding with Jennifer last year, you now have Lisa. If you're a single-sided daycare of any kind, you're welcome to send that stuff to me too, because I'm helping her. But you are going to have to send your end of year report, and then everybody's going to have to send your organizational chart. That's a requirement for everyone. For schools, your end of year report is going to be, your 769. You can just send us your report. If you already have some type of end of year report, we don't care what it looks like. You don't have to use a form we created. If you've been to our training, we've taught you on the form we created, that annual expenditure. You don't have to use it. You can send us whatever you have. But we need to know what your CACFP expenditures were compared to what you made to make sure you haven't made a profit. Right, again, nobody can upload anything. You can view it, you just can't upload. If you don't have 12 full months, if you didn't operate for 12 full months on CACFP, you're going to give us the months you did operate. So give us whatever months you have. And for some of you that are new, it might just be a couple, and that's fine. And so don't panic. If at the end of the budget, and so you also have to send that end of year and then the individual months that you did the expenditure worksheet. So if you operated 12 months, you're going to have 13 pages total to send us, unless you have some other type of accounting report that's better than ours, and you can send us that. If you're unsure if it's good enough, send it to me and I'll tell you. But the point is just to make sure you're not making a profit. And what we consider a profit in CACFP is more than 3 months average. So don't panic if you have money left over that you haven't spent, because it's not a profit until you've exceeded your 3 months average of expenditures. And we'll work with you on that if you did exceed it. We have schools, tribes, some of our bigger institutions who, because of COVID, had extra funding. You might have a profit, and we'll work with you on a spend down plan. So you worked on your application. Somebody said in a direct message, you worked on your application on Thursday or Friday, but it never would save the information you put in. So if it's not saving on your application here, it means something's missing. You didn't, some information wasn't missing, because that save button checks a lot of different things on that page, and it will not save until it's all completely filled in. Okay, so we're gonna look at the budget real quick. So if you are a school, or if you're family daycare home sponsor, or if you're a sponsor of any kind, you don't have this form on your checklist. For schools, it's not required. If you're a sponsor, it's somewhere else. So you can just ignore me for a minute and we'll come back to stuff that applies to in a second. So the budget's brand new, and it's hopefully a lot less painful than last year's. But if you've done your end of year, your annual end of year, this part A should be super easy, because your end of year is taking what you spent and totaling it up, and your projected income, or your projected annual CACFP expenditures, not income, you should just take that and inflate it by 10 to 15%. What do you think it will cost you to operate CACFP for the next 12 months? And we don't care what 12 months that you're giving us. If you want to give us your last finished fiscal year, that's fine. If you want to give us your most recent 12 months, that's fine. We don't care, because kind of it all comes out in the wash anyway. So if you operate January to December, your last fiscal year would be last year, and that would be adequate if you sent us that. But we don't care as long as it's 12 months or however many months you've been operating, if it's less than 12 months. But if you take those amounts and you inflate it, that's going to give your projected amount. And where it's going to be easier now for us is because we're not just arbitrarily approving numbers that we have in the office, no idea if they're somewhat accurate or not. Okay. And last year, like I said, was a disaster, because we were making you guys put numbers in everywhere, because technically you have all these expenses, but you didn't necessarily pay for it with CACFP. And you were like, why are we having to do this? And so I think maybe breaking it down this way will make a little more sense. So in part A, it's just your projected annual CACFP expenditures. How much do you think you need to operate CACFP? You're going to take your annual, increase it, and that's what you're going to put here. The difference is that when you send us that end of year report, we have something to look at. So if we see for 12 months, all you paid for was food and milk, and you didn't even have enough to pay for any of these other costs, and you don't anticipate that changing, we're not going to make you put anything in all these other lines. If all you spent was food and milk and CACFP food related, and you still had, you spent, which we've seen a lot like that, you've spent more than what you were reimbursed on. There's no sense to budget anything elsewhere. But I will encourage you and want to remind you guys that if there ever is a time that you do have an excess of CACFP funds that are unspent, you'll eventually end up with a profit. That's when you need these other projected things at least budgeted, because you need a way to spend it. If you don't feel like you'll ever need that money to spend it on those things because you spend enough on these, that's fine. But your end of year report and your projected annual expenditures should be reflective of one another. So you really shouldn't even be doing this budget until you've done your end of year report. And if you've not sent in that end of year report with the supporting documentation of those 12 months, we can't approve it. So you're just going to enter those numbers here and you're going to click save. I would encourage you that if you put anything on miscellaneous, just give us some explanation of what it is, just briefly, and then click save and it will total for you. Any questions on part A? That's just what you think it will cost to operate CACFP based on the prior year. You cannot upload anything. You have to email it or mail it to us. You will not be able to upload anything into our system yet. And I will agree. We need a better way to do that. I think probably next year, because this is something that we'll continue doing forever as long as I know it, until we change it again. But we got to have your end of year. We got to make sure you guys aren't making a profit. Hopefully next year we'll have a better way to allow you to upload it instead of emailing it, because that is kind of a mess, waiting on emails. And then we have so many emails that gets lost in the shuffle. But for now, you just got to send it to your person. So which ones do we have to fill out? Can you clarify which one of these line items? You'll see on my page, I can type in these. This should be grayed out for you. Part A, you should put a number in every box that you feel like you need expenses for the next 12 months. So that should be reflective of your end of year report. So if you've taken all 12 months of your expenditure worksheets, you've added them all together and put them on your end of year, you should take the numbers, because these columns match that form exactly if you're using our form. Inflate those numbers by 10 to 15%, and that's what you put in here. So for schools, plug your ears. Y'all don't have to do this. Part B, this is the part that still blows everyone's mind, but you still have to report it. And I will explain why. It's because we're trying to make sure you're viable. So what does it mean that you're viable? It means that you can operate this program and you are a profitable business or institution, even though you're a nonprofit. We need to make sure that you're viable and you can operate without our money. So down here, you're going to report your income for all your institution, but in part B, you're going to report all your other expenditures, everything else that's not CACFP. And you say, well, why is that your business? What do you care what we spend? We don't care. You can spend your money however you want. That's not our money. We only care how you spend our money. We just need to make sure that you have enough money to do this without our money. And if we don't know all your other expenditures and all your other income, there's no way for us to figure that out. So if you've come on the program in the last couple of years, you have painstakingly gone through this process, and you have to submit 12 months worth of financials. And we look at that and to make sure that you have ample income coming in. So in prior years, prior to last year, you guys just put in your CACFP expenditures and then you put in your income. And sure, you look like that you were in the positive because you didn't report all your other expenditures. So that's what part B is. This is where you're entering your projected business or organizational expenditures. It's not going to be exact. It's a projection. It should be kind of like how you do your taxes. Like, you guys should have a general idea of what it costs you for all your salaries and benefits. and your rent and your utilities and anything else that we may not have listed here, you can type in whatever you want. We don't care how you spend your other money. We just have to know that it's spent. Okay. And it's just a projection. Does that make sense here? The one thing that's going to be confusing is you might have some of these expenses that are also paid with CACFP funds. So say you pay for part of your utilities, or say you pay for part of your director's salary, and that's fine. You're just going to have to prorate it and make sure up here, you're only putting the amount that's an allowable amount to pay for her salary. But then you're not going to want to include her full salary down here, because then you're going to kind of double charge yourself. So you might have to prorate and split some of those costs up. But you need to report all your other expenditures. We don't need documentation to prove it. We come out and we see when we do a review, we have to look at your records then to make sure that you are viable. But you've got to report those expenses here and then click save. Debbie, will you email that to me, Debbie? Because that's only happening for family daycare homes. And I'm not sure why. It happened on something else, equipment rental. Send me an email because I'll forget. Because that's only happening in family daycare home sponsors. So any questions on Part B? You cannot leave it zero. It's got to be your whole other, we don't care how you spend it, right? We just got to know that you spent it. Because in Part C is where you're putting all your income. And one thing you will notice is that we have taken out CACFP funds. We ask you to put in your projected CACFP reimbursement. If you're viable, you should not need our money to make ends meet. So in the past, you might have projected you made $20,000 on CACFP. But then when you came down here to get your profit loss, it only showed you had like $1,000 left over. Well, if you made $20,000 on CACFP and you only have $1,000 left over, you had to have that other, $19,000 to survive. That you're not viable then. So that's why we took that out, because you guys are viable. We just got to get you to report it better and understand what we're looking for. So you're reporting all your other income here, your private pay, your Title 20 if it's a child or adult care, any kind of Medicaid funding, all other funding, not including CACFP. This will look a little different. There's some different wording. If you're a family daycare home, well, we'll get to that when we get to the sponsor application. We're just looking at the independent one now. Put all your funding, every bit of it. And if you put anything in miscellaneous, make a note and then save. Make sure you're clicking save on every one of these sections. Then Part D does it for you. You just click calculate profit loss to make sure it's done all the math, and it tells you, here's what you think you're going to spend for CACFP. Here's all your other expenses. Here's your income. Now, are you in the red? Are you in the green? It literally is either red or green. If you're in the red, it's not going to let you save this form because you cannot be at an operational loss and operate this program. That's regulatory. So Part A, only CACFP. Part B is all your other expenses for your organization or business. Part C is all of your income, excluding CACFP. It does not go in here. It's not income. It's a reimbursement for an expense that you're already incurring. Part D does it for you, and it tells you whether you are in a profit or loss. Any questions on that? It should be pretty straightforward if you're keeping, adequate records of your finances. Part F, you might remember that in years prior, this was its own form. We just dumped it on here to have one less form for you to do. But we did make some changes. So for many, many years, you're welcome. I hope it's easier. I hope it's clearer in what we're trying to get at. It's not to be intrusive or ask for stuff you feel like we shouldn't know. It's just to make sure you are doing what you're supposed to by regs. So in years past, we harped and harped and harped on you guys. We said Title 20, Title 20, Title 20, it's federal funds, you have to report it. Well, it's not. We don't know when it changed. It was some years ago. We don't know when it changed. We were all dumbfounded when we realized it. We found out kind of mid-year, and we weren't prepared to make the announcement and let you guys know that until we got it in writing from our state auditors and USDA. And I jokingly say that I'm going to laminate and put those emails in a safety deposit box for when they come back and tell us it's wrong. Because as long as we've ever known, Title 20 was considered federal funding. But what we've been told and what we've learned is that Title 20 DHS funding is, once it gets into your hands, is not considered a federal reward because it's you contract with them. So I say all that to make sure you understand that if you don't receive any other federal funding, it's going to be zero. In years past, if you got DHS, we kicked it out and said, hey, you got to put that here. You don't put it here now. So mostly it's going to be our tribes, anyone that gets any kind of Medicaid funding. Schools, you're going to have, no, schools don't even have to do this form, never mind. So most everyone's going to be zero, honestly. Now, I have had the question, does tribal funding count as federal funds? I don't know yet. I don't have that in writing. If you question if tribal funding kind of should follow suit with DHS subsidy, give me the right person to talk to. If we can get it in writing, we'll make that change. But yes, you would report any grants, but not any COVID money. PPP loans or grants or any of that stuff, anything you got as a result of COVID, you do not have to report. It is not subject to the audit requirements. So the reason you have to fill this out is because if you spend more, $750,000 or more a year, you have to have an audit. Sorry, I start reading comments and I get sidetracked. So this part right now, if you're a sponsor and we haven't gotten a sponsor application yet, I'll do that next. But right now, you guys have to fill this out, but I'm going to have it turned off. A school doesn't even really have to report this. So Gina, are you multi-sided or single-sided? I can't remember. Yeah, you can get a copy of the recording when we're done. I'll forget, so email me. So you're single-sided, so you won't even see this anywhere, Gina. And I'll mention it when we get to the multi-sided one, but you won't even have to report this anywhere. Schools have to, y'all have to send in an audit anyway. So it's kind of, we are kicking a dead horse. We are beating it to death with a lot of things, especially for schools. You guys send that to SDE and we have to follow up on them anyhow, so it doesn't matter. So everyone, if you're renewing, everyone, if you want a copy of this, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just, I've got a billion things going on, so I will forget to come back to this. Email me and ask for a recording of that, and I'll make sure, or I'll just ask Kendra to send it to everyone. So, okay. We also used to say funds received. And in all this debacle about Title 20 and is it federal funds and all yada, yada, we've also found out that it's not received, it's expended. So they want you to report, what did you spend? What did you spend in federal funds? Yeah, don't email me. And I'll just, I want to tell Kendra to send it to all you guys just to be safe. So some of you might get it, may not want it, but there you go. Okay. Okay, so expended, what did you spend in federal funds? What did you spend in CACFP funds? CACFP funds are federal, so you have to report here what you spent. And that's pretty easy because you've already done your end of year report, just plug that number in here. Okay. If you didn't receive it, you couldn't have spent it. And if you spent more than you received, then I don't know, I sound like I said it backwards. You're just going to put what you received. A lot of you do spend more than you receive in CACFP. So expended and received is kind of the same thing depending on what you spent. Hopefully that made sense. So if these numbers added up equal over 750,000, you have to have a date here. A date of an audit. It's not our audit. We don't call what we do audits. We call what we do administrative reviews. An audit is like an outside audit. So most of you, it's not going to apply to. Only if you make over $750,000 in CACFP, we're going to have sponsors that go over that. But most of you, you're going to put a number here, and that's all you need to do on federal funds. And if you're a school, you don't even have to fill it out. And then click save and submit. And if you try to submit and it looks like this, it's going to say, oops, you can't do that. You're not viable. If you have a negative here, that means you need to go up here. You've either got to decrease your spending or increase your funding. And likely you will need to decrease something. and not just make up income. Any questions on this? Okay. If you think of something later, you're welcome to put it in the chat or speak up. So I'm going to change it to a sponsor. No, you're a school. If you are a public school doing at risk, you do not put anything. You don't even have a budget. I don't know who you're with, Kelly. If you're any other type of institution, you would have to report it. Only people that are exempt are public schools that do at risk. There is a form, Dana, for site maintenance. If you need stuff changed over here, there's not really a form. We have that site ad form, but really for the sake of not having to do more forms, just email it to us. If you have anything in here that needs updated, just send us an email and tell us what site and what needs to be changed, or you can print it up on a Word doc, whatever is easiest for you guys. We get you guys bogged down with so many different forms, whatever's easiest for you to get us the right information, and we'll make it right. And if truly you are the person responsible for all these sites, then if you want it to be, which in your case, or for schools, a lot of time the responsible person might be the food service director. It could be, because typically if for a school, if we're gonna show up on a review, you're gonna be there and you're gonna be the person we're talking with. So if you're ultimately the person responsible for all these sites, that's fine. It's really going to be only like our sponsors of daycares who have directors on site that might be different for every single one. But there are situations where it could be the same person. And if you want us to change it to be you on every one of them, Dana, just email me, because I'll forget that I just told you that. Okay, so if you are multi-sited, this is the application for you. You are a sponsor and you have a sponsor application for participation. And this applies to every type of sponsor type. Depending on the kind of sponsor you are, there'll be different things you might have to do. So you'll go in here, you'll see that some of it's auto-populated. If any of it's wrong, let us know. This is coming from your main page, okay? Your main business page. If you are a public school that all you do is at risk, I'm not talking about public schools that have Head Starts. I'm talking about a public school that does at-risk only. Make sure you click this button. If you are if you're a Head Start or something, or a multi-sited that has a Head Start in a public school, you're still just going to be none of the above. This public school button is for at-risk only public schools. That's all you do. And the reason is because when you click this, it disables your budget, because schools are not required to do a budget. That's regulatory. A public school that's operating, and it's not really just at risk. If we had a school that legitimately came on with some type of other CACFP operation, we just don't have any right now, they wouldn't be required. But when we have schools that just have a Head Start that just happen to be in that school, you still have to go by the other requirements of CACFP. So if you're a public school, and you're operating as a public school and at risk, because that's the only kind that we have that this applies to, click that. It's going to disable all of this budget. You don't have to do it. I'm sorry for everyone else that is not true for. We did miss this though. It's still going to make you put some numbers. It might still make you put numbers here. You don't have to. We just missed getting that grade out. So that's what I was Gina asked earlier. What do schools not have to do? This page might still force you to, if you are a sponsor and you're a school, go ahead and report it. Nothing will be done with it, but we still just haven't gotten it fixed to where it's turned off and grayed off like the rest of it. I just missed it when we were testing. So everyone else is going to click either tribe or none of the above. Again, we're asking the same questions over and over. Are you operating in other states? If so, say yes. And again, on this one, all you're going to see is this. We have control of these months. So we'll only approve you for the months in which you're eligible for. You don't have to put anything here unless you're brand new. Number 9 is the number of your facilities, while number 10 is the number of the participants enrolled. So here's your number of sites. This is your number of kids or adults. Number 11, again, we're beating another dead horse. it asks again what your total federal funds expended. So it's going to be the same thing as what's reported down here. I just missed that. We're really trying to eliminate asking the same stuff over and over, but I missed it. Are all your sites under the sponsorship of the same legal entity? We ask that about every site, but we need to know at sponsor level, yes or no. And if you're a nonprofit and you have unaffiliated sites, every site has to have proof of nonprofit status. That we have very few of those that even apply to. Number 13 has to be yes, and then we get to part A. Part A on a sponsor budget works exactly the same as what I just went through. So I'm not going to go over this one in detail, but you do have some extra line items here. And that's just because you have additional expenditures that an independent wouldn't have. You guys are required to train your sites. You're required to travel and monitor and things like that. And so like we felt it was important, we still broke down some of those admin costs a little more than we did for the independent. But it doesn't change the goal here. You have your end of year report. You're going to plug in your numbers where it's applicable. If you don't use our form and you have your own, because sometimes you guys have accounting methods and systems that are far better than the forms that we've created. You guys can always use your own stuff with the approval of your consultant or our office. It's got to be equivalent or better than, but a lot of you might have used QuickBooks or something like that. What you can get us might be better than our form altogether. Part B again is going to be your projected annual expenditures for entire business or organization. The one group of people where this gets tricky is our family daycare home sponsors. Will profit loss reports work? Potentially, Princess. If you'll send it to us and we can look at it, we would still need the monthly like expenditure worksheets that you fill out every month too. But a profit loss could potentially be even better. I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So if you're not a family daycare home sponsor, ignore what I'm about to say. I'm saying this because I know I have make sure they're still in here. Yeah, I still got a couple here. This gets tricky for you guys because family daycare homes are like their own ball of wax. They just operate, those sponsors for family daycare homes operate completely differently than any of our other sponsors. And so our sponsors of centers, and that's everyone else other than family daycare home, you guys report your number of meals, we do the times rate, and that's what you get paid. And you can only spend a certain amount of that money you get paid. Whereas for family daycare homes, you guys tell us how much we're supposed to pay each provider, and we give you that money, and you have to pay all that money to your providers. But then you get paid your administrative fee. So for every many providers you have, you get a certain amount of dollars to pay for your administrative costs. So your salaries, rent, yada, yada, yada. Well, most of you just operate within that budget, especially when you have a family daycare home sponsor that there's just a couple of you, because we have a few that's all you do, and that's okay. But you still have to report, and it's going to be minimal. These are going to be the only people that are going to have minimal amounts reported in B and C. You still have to have other funding above and beyond what we give you to operate. Otherwise, you're not viable. And we've really been preaching that for the last couple of years. You have to be able to operate when we're not able to pay. And the best way I can explain it is when you need to go buy paper, or you have something at the end of the month that you need to go out and buy, has there ever been a time that you didn't have our money to pay for it? And 100% of you guys and family daycare home sponsors are going to say yes. Okay, what money did you use to pay for it? If you had run out of our money and you needed something and you got it and you paid for it, you have other annual expenditures and you also have the money to pay for it. It's going to be minimal, but that's what you need to report here. And it's a projected amount because you have to put something in Part B. So think of it like that. I mean, and if you have questions, family daycare homes, like I said, there's only a couple of you on here, call me, email me, and we can work through it. But for everybody else, you're going to have, great big numbers here. Okay, you're multi-sided. Most of you have community action agencies, Head Start programs. You guys are going to have great big numbers here. They don't have to be exact, but it should be your projected amount that it costs your institution, your organization to operate. For schools on the end of year report, do we need to show a profit? You don't need to show a profit. You shouldn't really show a profit. You need to show, and that's where it's confusing. You guys a school doesn't have to do a budget. We know you're viable. We know you have other funding, but we still need the end of year report to show that you aren't making a profit from CACFP. And so what we consider, we have a calculation and it's in your manual that talks about that in the financial management section that we've added. But a profit isn't, you haven't made a profit until you have exceeded a 3-month average. So look at what your 3 months, take your 3 months worth of reimbursement and figure out what the average is. And if your ending balance or ending operating balance is more than that, you've made a profit and we need to talk. If it's less than that, you're good. You haven't made a profit. And if you're confused on how to do that, just reach out to us. So just because you have a positive balance on CACFP doesn't mean you've made a profit. But as overall, as a business, as an organization, when you're looking at your whole institution, yes, you have to show that you aren't in the negative, because then you're not viable. And I know that's confusing. As far as CACFP goes, you cannot make a profit. As far as an institution and an organization goes, yes, you cannot be in the hole or you're not viable. Part C is just the same. You're reporting all your revenue. For some of you, it's going to be great big numbers, but it's just a projection. Part D is different, just for sponsors of centers, as it states here. So like I said before, you guys, you report your number of meals, it calculates, and you get paid. And then you'll see it on your claim. It'll calculate 15% and say, this is the amount you can use for your admin cost. If you are single-sided, what I'm saying doesn't apply to you. If you have more than one side, it does. You can use the funds you receive as a sponsor of a center to pay for any admin costs, but you can't use more than 15% of it to pay for anything other than food and milk and CACFP related cost. That's what this does here. So you're going to plug in your projected reimbursement, and it's going to figure whether or not the sum of 1 through 7. So if you go up here on part A, 1 through 7, these are all considered admin costs. If the grand total of all 7 of these exceed 15% of your projected reimbursement, it's going to say, you're not in compliance. You need to change something. And only thing you really can do is, you can increase your CACFP reimbursement, but it needs to be reasonable to what you think your projected amount would be. But likely you need to go up here and decrease these numbers in 1 through 7. Family daycare homes, none of that applies to you. This is only for all our other sponsors other than family daycare homes. Part E, all you have to do here is put in there your number of sites. For schools, none of this still applies. You don't have to do any of it. It automatically defaults and you don't need to put anything. Everyone else, you got to put your number of sites. How many sites are you budgeted on? Is this budget planned for? Part F, nothing's changed about that. You got to fill it out. Exactly what we discussed. Then part G is for family daycare home sponsors only. So you guys can even fill this out. It's grayed out for you. We go in there, you have to send us your end of year report. That's nothing new for family daycare home sponsors. You guys have been sending your end of year report for years now since this was implemented. So we need to know how much you spent. We compare it to how much you were paid in your admin fees and whether or not you have a carryover or not. If you have questions about needing about what you made, we haven't sent those reports out yet just because we're waiting on everyone to do their claim. If you're a family daycare home, what I just said doesn't mean anything. Trying to save to get to the next page. Bear with me, sorry, I'm just making stuff up. Oh my goodness. Here's a page 2. I'm trying to get, there we go. All right. So page 2, first, the sponsor application is a little bit different. There used to be 4 questions here. If you go back to prior years, you can see the other 2 questions we removed. But we're asking this on the VCA form. So schools, you do have to go to the second page and fill it out, your school at risk, because we do need to know this for you, but those other 2 missing questions are not applicable for you guys anyways, so it doesn't matter. But these are the questions about your procedures for collecting records, specifically about the family size and income application. This one's asking about how you're dispersing your funds. Make sure you're answering this correctly, because I don't know of any sponsor in our state other than family daycare homes that get the money from us and then pay someone. You guys pay your providers when you're a family daycare home sponsor, but everyone else, you don't do that. It is regulatory that when we pay you, you have 5 days to pay those people, your sites. That's really only happening for family daycare homes. So a lot of times people just answer this question to meet the requirement, but you're not paying your site. So if you're incurring all the costs, or you're doing all the ordering at the sponsor level, or you're preparing the meals and dispersing them, put that there, because you're not paying your sites. So that's what this question is about. Section B, ethnic and racial breakup. I'm not going to go back over that because it's the same changes. We added not reported and 2 or more races. This is where I mentioned earlier where you have to put all your potential beneficiary. If you don't know that information, there's ways to look it up. And if you need help, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Part C rolled forward with all your information from last year about your monitoring. Make sure none of it has changed. And most importantly, make sure in your on-site monitoring staffing ratio, these numbers are correct. So whatever these 2 numbers add up to be, have to be the number of sites you truly have on your application. Because you have to have enough monitors to be able to adequately monitor all your sites. Anytime you add or remove a site, and this happens more with our family daycare homes because those are always fluctuating, but you guys multi-sited at any point in time, you guys might add or remove a site. And when you do, it's important to come and update page 2 of your sponsor application to make sure you're in compliance with your monitoring ratios. Section D, nothing's changed. You just click it and say, yeah, we're going to do this training. You're going to describe your policy for training. And instead of putting a name here, you're supposed to put the title of who does the training. And that's your sponsor application. Dana, because I know you're, are you okay if I go to your application, Dana, if you're still in here, so I can show the at-risk? Okay. Thank you. The at-risk form doesn't show up until, oh my, we have 2 in there for you. How'd that happen? Sorry. Okay, I fixed it. Okay, so what I wanted to get to was to show you this at-risk questionnaire. So for those of you that are at risk in here, this is only going to show up. And we do have a bug on the schools, and it's super frustrating, and it's supposed to be fixed Thursday, Friday. See, I don't even know what day it is, Friday morning. It'll be pushed out Thursday night. So if you go down here and you click on return to checklist, it takes you back to this. And I know it's super frustrating, but you don't have to do the budget, so you get to click extra buttons now. You're not going to see this form unless you're truly at risk. If it's not checked on your application for participation, like I showed you, then you're not going to have this form, and you shouldn't have this form. So we did that so that we would eliminate people filling it out that didn't need to. So if this form is on your checklist, you got to do it. And I just wanted to point out that we've added a couple of new questions that are specifically for school districts only. Are you doing the extended learning hour, which has been a hot topic this year? And are you doing offer versus serve? Just because we didn't ask it anywhere else. Offer versus serve doesn't apply to anyone else other than adult daycares. And we also added that question as well onto adult daycare questionnaire. Just because we just need a way to know. Should a school have a sponsor application? Not if you're multi-sited, you'll have a sponsor application. If you only have one site, Marissa, you're not going to have that. So this one's important. You guys, it's been a mess. We know it. We took away your access. We said, hey, schools, we need your bell schedules and all that. It's been a long drawn out debacle, and we apologize for it, but it's just another mess we've been trying to clean up. Only schools have the ability to operate before the end of the school day. Okay. At-risk program was designed to be an after-school at-risk program. Okay. But if you're a school district, regs have this very vague exception that you can serve before school is out only if you have an extended learning hour. And so what the extended learning hour is, and if you're not a public school district, just ignore what I'm saying. If you're not at risk, it doesn't apply to you anyway. But if you want to serve before the last bell of the day, there are two things that really must happen. First, you have to have completed a full day of school. And what we consider that in Oklahoma is 6 hours of rigorous education. But then you also have to go an additional hour, which means you have to have completed 7 full hours of education, not including your lunch. So it is confusing because some people say, well, I do have 6 hours. Well, you might, but you can start that meal after the 6th hour, but you still have to have, that's what the extended learning hour is. You've completed 6, but you still have 1 whole hour left of education. And so we really had to kind of hone in on that and make sure we had approved people right for that. And some people found out they truly weren't eligible just by maybe a few minutes. And I know it was infuriating, but we had to make sure it was done right, which is why we needed all your bell schedules. So if you do that, please put that information here. I think we've already got everybody cleaned up for the new year for schools. You should be good to go. If not, we've still got a few that we're waiting on some information. But that's why if you don't see this form on your list, you don't need it. You don't need to worry about it. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm going to go back to my test page. You guys have been really quiet, and I think most of you hadn't had training at all. So that's why I've just carried on about all the new changes. But if you have questions, now is the time. Most importantly, for you to know, we cannot approve anything unless we have your end of year report and your organizational chart. Send it to your person, or you're welcome to send it to me and I'll get it uploaded for you, because it's just a crazy time right now. We've all got so many emails, but I can surely help with those girls on getting things uploaded to where they belong. Any questions on anything? Okay, so after you get all your forms done, you have to make sure all your forms and everything, your uploaded documents are correct. We do have a couple weird glitches, like Debbie, you mentioned earlier, it's telling you have to check something and you don't really have it. Remember to email me, but you should only have to put check marks on these things that are truly uploaded and required. So you've got to check all these after you verified in here that they're correct. And it won't let you submit until you say, yep, I've got that submitted. I've got that document submitted. And then once you've clicked all those, you come down here and we added this. You have to physically type your name in here and say, certify that you've read all this, you've made sure the business maintenance page, yada, 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 is all correct. And we just did that because we want you guys to understand that as we're trying to make this an easier application with stuff rolled forward, submitted, and approved, that you understand that although it's still approved, you're still required to review it and make sure it's up to date. Okay, so you guys have gotten really good about making updates as the year goes on. So if you're doing that constantly, your application renewal should be fairly smooth. One thing I like to point out here too is, if you are logged in as Betty Joe, but your name is really Fred Rogers, you shouldn't do that, okay? We know that happens. Don't log in as other people. Don't share your user accounts. If you need somebody else to have a user account to do something, or if you need your own, get us the certificate of authority, because we're going to find out, and it's going to be painfully obvious if you accidentally sign your name, but you're logged in as someone else. Please don't do that. We will have to kick it out because the person logged in needs to be the person's name who's recorded here. Not saying you can't do it, but you need to do it as you and have your own user account. Once you've put your name in here, you can click submit, and then you're just waiting on us. Marissa, you're a public school, so unless you are with a food service company, you wouldn't need anything. Do you guys prepare your own meals, or do you have a company that does it? Okay, so then you would already have an approved RFP on file on the NSLP side, and we would need a copy of that. And it likely might already be in your uploaded documents, so you should go and take a look and see what's in there. Yes, we do kind of call it something different. We're trying to change that terminology. But you should see something uploaded that says that if we have it on file. Food Service Management Company contract. So like, for example, if you use Keystone, we need to have your Keystone RFP in here. If you don't see it, we need to get a copy of it. And to expedite, send a copy to Jennifer Pryor, so she has it right there and doesn't have to dig it up in our files. But it might already be there, I don't know. Once you submit the application, we have 30 days to review. I don't anticipate the mess we had last year. We were approving applications until like, it felt like spring break. It was bonkers. But there's a few things you need to remember why we can't approve you right away. If we get to your application and the proper person hasn't had training, we can't approve you. If we get your application and you've not submitted your organizational chart or your end of year report, we can't approve you. So those are things you need to make sure that are taken care of before you click that submit button. Because if we get to it and you haven't done it, we'll just have to kick it out and say, sorry, you need to complete these things. If you're unsure who needs to attend training, it's going to be this person listed here. Okay. Doesn't mean that other people shouldn't also attend, but this is the person that needs to attend it to suffice. There are some exceptions, like, you know, we have some tribes that have like the chief's name listed there, or military people who have like the flight crew chief. I mean, we don't expect those folks to attend. Big districts where the superintendent, we don't always expect those people to attend training, but it's going to be the next person down, your food service director, your main director person of the program. And if you're unsure if the right person's attended training, reach out to me and we'll make sure that you've met that requirement. After you've submitted all those things to us and we get to your application as we're approving it, if anything's wrong with any of these forms, we'll click this button and we'll put details in here and tell you what's wrong with it. And we generally try to send an email as well. But if you're wondering like, hey, what's up with my application? Has it been approved yet? Come here first and take a look. You see a check mark here, that means we've looked at it and we've kicked it out. Kicked it out means it's went back to a pending submission status. It means we need something from you. If there's a check mark here, click on this details box and a comment, you know, like, I don't know. A lot of times on this one, we'll just say, please resubmit. Oh no, that's the wrong one. The VCA is not there. On the VCA, a lot of times we'll say, please resubmit. And sometimes on this one, because we accidentally kick it out. If that's what it says, just go down there, go in here, resubmit the form and resubmit your application. Otherwise, follow the directions of what it says we need, and then resubmit. And again, every time it gets kicked out and resubmitted, you unfortunately go back to the bottom. So you have another 30 days, but I really don't anticipate it taking near as long as it did last year. As long as you submit by October 31st, you will be eligible for October. If you do not submit originally by October 31st, and after you submit, that original submission date will be captured here and it will stay there no matter how many times you resubmit. So if this is October 31st at 11:59 or before, you'll be eligible for October, but we cannot backdate anything prior to the month it was submitted. So get in there and get it submitted. You've got 20 days. That's all I got. You guys have any questions? I think I answered your question, both Marissa and Lacey, about the contracts. Agreement to furnish food generally is something between, it's not a formal food service company. You guys have your own RFP and we should have that on file. And if we don't, send it. Okay, that's all I got. I'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions that you think of, please ask now. It's easier for us to do it now, and it's impossible for us to answer all our phone calls individually. Thank you, Dana. If I've asked you to email me something, don't forget to email it to me. So I've probably already forgotten what you asked me by now. Okay, you guys take care.
I did have a question. I was trying to type it, but I was typing slower than you were ready to log off. So
That's okay. I'm still here.
Okay. From your beginning, you said there are different trainings, like different topics within the CACFP. I'm just confirming that this is the one that Executive Director who's sitting here with me, Johnny Bryant, and I need to attend.
This is the one for just your application, the required training. Do you mind if I look up? Thank you guys that are saying thank you and leaving. If you have questions, still hang on. Do you care if I pull up your application?
No, that's fine.
Who are you with?
United Community Action.
Okay, that's what I thought. Are you Michelle?
No, I'm Monica. Michelle's our CFO.
Okay. So really, let me see. Somebody went to training in Stillwater. Was that you?
That was Michelle and some of our other accounting department.
Then you guys have met your training requirement. If she
Okay,
attended this one, you guys are good.
okay, well, Johnny Bryan and I also did the civil rights training link. So we have that certificate on file. And I
Fantastic.
have now sat here and attended this one. I mean, I guess we'll just make that notation. It's extra.
Yeah, just keep it with your, I mean, for the purpose of renewing your application, as long as one person and that main person has come to the main training, your application will be approved. But I would encourage you guys to take as much training as you can, because if you've done anything with this program for any amount of time, it's always changing, unfortunately. So go to your training calendar. Oops, you got to put dates. Let's see. Go in here and look. If you haven't had the manual training, I highly recommend that you take it, that any new people take that. And we typically hold that training once a month, but right now it's just like we have a ton of training because it's renewal time and we want to get everyone trained. So go in here and look up at all the training that we have. Let's see. I don't know why I did that.
But as far as what is required, we have achieved that level at this point.
Yep, you have done what's required to be approved for your renewal. But we have another, oh, that's what we're doing right now. CACF, that's what I'm doing Thursday. I think we're winding down. It's going to start going to, so CACFP training manual workshop. There's one on the 19th. So if you need someone that needs a good solid training about all of our requirements, that's what you need to go to.
Okay.
But then after the new year winds down, we start breaking it back down into our different topic trainings, and we do one specifically for sponsors. Then we do one specifically like this one right here. This is just a 1-hour training for a sponsor to tell you what's different that you need to do as a sponsor. Food buying guide, that's a good one. So I would get in here and look at it, because we have them after we get past this craziness of the new year. We have them all broken down into different topics that are more manageable for you guys to attend rather than a 6-hour training. So
Okay. Okay, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the information. It was interesting today.
And so I've got someone, I've always done the training in our director, and it has always been approved. Yes, so we really are making sure that the owner, the right person, has attended the training. But sometimes, Kelly, you're with EOC. Let me look it up real quick. That's what I'm saying. With every rule, there's always an exception, especially in this, because sometimes we have such big institutions, we can't hardly expect the main person up here that has the responsibility of hiring and firing to attend that training. Which one are you? This one? Maybe not. Oh, that is you. Okay. So what is your title, Kelly? Because we wouldn't necessarily expect the board president to come, but we would expect the director to come. And this would be an exception to that rule, because a board president, they have the ability to hire and fire. They know you have a program. They can help us take care of what needs to be taken care of if you were ever SD. But yeah, really, last year what we did was, if someone needed training that should have, we still approved your application, but only for a couple of months. So I really do think your director, she should also come. Yeah. Something else I didn't touch on, and we still have some of you nonprofits in here, the background checks. That's a hot topic too. So if you are a nonprofit institution, which you guys aren't, you're public. If you are a nonprofit, you have to comply with that background check requirement. Even if you've already had one because of your employer, you still have to submit it to us and do it. And I know that seems ridiculous, but it's because we have private nonprofits are kind of just a special group that we have, the at-risk programs that can kind of come in and fly under the radar, and they're not held to any other type of standard as far as background checks go. So we don't need it for public institutions. We don't need it for for-profit institutions. We just need it for our private nonprofit, because for the most part, those people, it's even at the sponsored level, it's not required that you have a background check. We know that if you work in childcare or adult care or in a school, that you've already had a background check. But in order to initiate this new policy, we had to pick that private nonprofit sector of our people. Some of you have already had the background check, but you're still going to have to submit to us. And we don't need it for everyone and all your sites. So say UCAP is a good example. You guys are a sponsor and you have lots of sites that are, you know, Head Starts or whatever underneath you. We don't need it for those sites. We know they've already had it, but the people up here in the top, those are the people that have to do it, because we don't know that you've done it. You might have, and you probably had one more stringent than ours, and it was probably like a fingerprint and nationals. We're just doing the state OSBI one. We're just trying to capture people that I have personally witnessed come on and didn't have any business handling federal dollars, much less operating programs around children. And I think that you could be supportive of us trying to deter those people and not allowing them to come on. And this is the only way we could do that. That's the honest truth on that. So if you have sent in, thank you too, guys. If you've sent in your background check, you've submitted it, you're good. You're going to get approved. I've jokingly said in all my trainings that I haven't even submitted any of them. I've got the payment and the request for several of you, but we're still working on our process on our side. So we're going to go ahead and approve you. But if I find out you're a serial killer after the fact, we will deny your application and send you appeal rights after the fact, because you can't appeal it. But, you know, yes. So for you, Chelsea, it would be you and probably Aline, anyone that's doing administrative responsibilities. Really, you guys are the only two that are handling that. I think that would be sufficient. We're never going to capture everyone. It's just those, we've had applicants that right up off at the front, if we had a way to have had the policy and the process in place to have been able to run those checks on them, we could have been like, whoa, pump the brakes, you're not eligible. But we have to first get everyone else into compliance. So it's the bad apples that messes it up for all you good ones. Yes, I have another one. Like I said, I think today's Tuesday. The next one's on Thursday, the 13th. We're also doing one Saturday morning. Then we're doing another one next Tuesday evening. So we're trying to do stuff at different times to accommodate your schedules, because we know you guys wear like 27 hats at one time. And 9 o'clock in the morning isn't always an adequate time. So I'll have, oh, great. Come back, go through it, find out your questions and come back. That's what we're doing. No, so you have to send it directly to us, Chelsea, and I know that's also annoying. And I know that you're sending sensitive information. So if you want me to send you a secure link for you to upload your copies of your driver's license and your social in that form, email me and I'll send it to you, because I wouldn't want to just send it in the mail either. But it does have to come to me, because also those same individuals that we have initiated this process for have also shown us that through the wonderful technology in today's age, you can alter any document. So we have to do it ourselves. Sorry. When you get on your application and I type things, it doesn't show. So until you save it, Candace, who are you with? And I'll go look it up. Okay, I thought you were with the school. It might just be a glitch. Those free applications, I'm assuming it's okay for me to open up your application. If not, say so now. It doesn't show when I go back to your checklist that you started. What shows on mine, all these have checks on it. So this means if you go in there and open it and do anything, this check will be checked. And then obviously once you submit, these will be checked. Maybe I don't understand. But you look good to go for me. You just got these, review these, do these 3 forms, and you're good to go. Send in your end of year report. Unless I'm mistaken, I see that it's fine. But I'm a little crazy right now because it's a crazy time, so I could be missing something. No worries. Any other questions, guys? If you get on and, like Princess said earlier, work through it. And if you're like, oh crap, I have this question, come back Thursday. We'll be here Thursday morning. All right. Going once, going twice. Anyone else? Thank you guys for your time. We look forward to getting your information. Don't forget to send us your stuff. We can approve you. That's all I got. You guys take care. If you need more help, we'll see you back here on another training. As these go on, they'll be a little more laid back. We'll just get on here and see what you need help with and go to your application and do it. Take care. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye, guys.